Welcome back to all my food warriors. Coach Joe here. Today it's Family Day weekend, and today we are going to be focusing on breakfast. We're going to be making some buttermilk pancakes. Absolutely simple, absolutely phenomenal in terms of the result. Now I've gotten into the habit of making batches of my dry mix, so it's just easier whenever I want to have pancakes. All of my dry ingredients are already mixed. I simply add my wet ingredients and I'm good to go. But these are phenomenally fluffy. They're light. And these are pancakes perhaps like you've never seen them before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by preparing my dry mix. What I have here is a big container. This is a big 3-liter polycarbonate container. This is what I use to keep my mix in. So what we're going to do, and these are absolutely phenomenal. You can have these any time of the day. You can have these breakfast, lunch, even for a quick dinner. So what I'm going to start with is about 5 cups of flour. Usually I use about 4 cups of a good organic all-purpose flour and then 1 cup of a good whole wheat or a wholemeal flour. I'm out of whole wheat flour today, so what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go with 5 cups of my all-purpose flour. And the way I measure out my 5 cups is I simply go in, lightly scoop it. I don't pack it in. I just give it a couple of taps just to work out any air bubbles, and then I just flatten out the top. This is 1 cup of flour. We're going to go 5 of these. There we are. That's 2. Third one. 3. And 4. And again, if I had my wholemeal or my whole wheat flour, this is where I'd add 1 additional cup of that. But seeing as I don't have any of that in the house today, we're simply going to go with 5 cups of our good organic all-purpose flour. And now to give this just a little bit more texture, what I'm going to do is, I'm done my flour, I'll just move this out of the way. I've got coarse ground cornmeal. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me a good bit of texture. It's going to give me a good bit of contrast in my pancake. So I'm just going to add 1 cup of my coarse cornmeal. There we are. So this is basically all of our dry ingredients. We're just going to clean up here quickly. And then we've got a couple of other items to put in there. So these are all of my flours. So into this as well, I have, this is 1 tablespoon of baking soda. I'm just going to add that in. I've got 2 tablespoons of baking powder. Just going to add that in as well. Now these are our leaveners. This is what's going to give us our rise in our pancake. Between baking soda and baking powder, 1 reacts with heat, 1 reacts with acid. So when we add our buttermilk, which is slightly acidic, you're going to get a bit of a rise there. And then when we cook them on the griddle, we're going to get our second rise from the heat. And then here I've got 4 tablespoons of sugar and 1 tablespoon of salt. And I'm just going to add this in. And then we're going to give this a mix. Now the reason why I love these containers, completely spill proof. So when I put the lid on this, and I'm obviously going to make sure there's some pressure on this, otherwise I'm going to end up wearing half of it. We're going to give this just a complete shake around. And everything stays contained within our container here. We want to make sure we get this completely and thoroughly mixed in. So now with this pancake mix right here, I've got enough for 3 batches. So we're a family of 4. Each batch will take about 2 cups of our dry mix, and then we'll mix that in with a bunch of our wet ingredients, which we'll get to in a sec. But ultimately, this is good for 3 times. So I make it once, I stick it in the cupboard, and this is good easily for a couple of months. Not that it lasts that long. Once you try it, it's that good. You're going to go through this stuff like nothing. So we're just going to give this one final mix, just to make sure that everything is completely homogeneous inside of our container, and then basically we are done. So we're going to just make sure that any of this stays inside our container here. Anything that may have been lodged between the lid and the lip, there we are. So this is our dry mix. Easy to do this well. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to cook these on an electric griddle. Because we're so many people in the house, it's just easier to cook this on a much larger surface. This is probably equivalent to 2 good-sized frying pans. So whenever I'm cooking pancakes in the house, always use an electric griddle. On top of that, it's got a little rotary dial here where I can set my temperature so I can really dial it in and get a good bit of accuracy when I'm cooking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to about 350 degrees. I'm going to let my griddle preheat. And now we're going to start getting everything ready for one batch of our pancakes. So I've got my 1 cup measure here. This is going to take 2 cups of our dry mix. And again, we're just going to let this settle in our cup. Not going to pack it in too tight. Shave off the top there. And I'm going to put that into what is basically an 8 cup measuring cup. And this is easy because it's got a spout. Whenever I pour it, whether I'm doing this in a pan or on a griddle, it's just easy to pour it and portion it out accurately. So here we go again. Just going to work out any air bubbles. And we've got 2 cups of our dry mix. Couldn't be easier. So now to this, we're going to mix our wet ingredients off to the side here as well. So here's our dry mix, ready to go. I've got another measuring cup here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to combine our buttermilk, our eggs, our melted butter, and our vanilla. So this is a double batch that I'm making today. So the 2 cups of our dry mix, we're going to start with 2 cups of buttermilk. Now buttermilk, I like using buttermilk more than milk just because it's slightly acidic and it gives you a better rise in the pancake. So we'll just open this up and we will measure this out to 2 cups. There we are. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack a couple of eggs here. These are just 2 large eggs. Give these a quick crack. There we are. And this recipe will easily give you enough for 4 people. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of my homemade vanilla extract. You can see I've got my vanilla beans in here. If you want the recipe for that, put it in the comments below, and I will share that with everyone as well. So I'm just going to give this a good, maybe a couple of tablespoons of vanilla extract. Again, this is for a double batch. And then I've got here some melted butter. And what I'm going to do is put about 3 or 4 tablespoons of melted butter in my mix. Keep a little bit behind, as I'm going to use that to grease my griddle, just to make sure we give it a nice golden brown color on the outside. So I'm just going to pour some of this in, a tiny bit more. There we are. And I will leave the rest here for my griddle. Now, I'm going to whisk this together. This is a special kind of whisk that I use whenever I'm using a straight-sided either saucepan or in this case a measuring cup. Because this is straight-sided, it gets down into the corners and makes sure that I leave nothing behind. It's not so important when I'm mixing liquids like this, but when I get into the dry ingredients and it gets to be a little thicker, then that's when you really want to get into those corners and make sure that everything is mixed together. So here we are. We've got our butter, our eggs, our buttermilk, and our vanilla extract. So there we are. All of our wet ingredients are combined, and now we're going to combine our wet into our dry. There we are. Just going to get my spatula, make sure that we leave nothing behind here. That's it. Put this guy off to the side. And now, we're just going to give this a good whisk. We don't want to overbeat this. We just want to bring all of this together. We don't want any lumps in our mixture. We want this to be nicely uniform. So we will give this a thorough whisking, get into the corners there. Make sure that we leave nothing in the creases of our measuring cup. And there we are. Now, if you've got a couple of little pieces of flour in there, don't worry about it. As this cooks and as this rests, the flour will hydrate, so it will soak up that liquid, and those will work themselves out as this cooks on the griddle. You can easily make these in a frying pan as well. It's just gonna take you a little bit longer, or you can get a couple of frying pans going on the stove. If you do have an electric griddle, it's the perfect application for this. Perfect tool for the job. So we'll get this over there. We'll just use our spatula now to make sure that we get everything off the side. And you'll start to see in the bottom of the measuring cup here, you'll start to see those bubbles forming. Again, that's the buttermilk that's reacting with our leavening agents, and that's already starting to create that lift. Our griddle will be ready to go in about 30 seconds. As soon as the light comes off, our griddle's at temperature, and we'll start to get our pancakes right on there. So I will see you in about 30 seconds. I'm just gonna give this a quick wipe down, and I will be right back. All right, our griddle is ready. The light is off our indicator here. So if you're gonna cook this on the stove, I'd say cook it over about medium heat. Don't wanna overcook these too quickly. So what I'm gonna do is I have a little bit of our leftover melted butter. I've got here a silicone brush, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a little bit of butter on our griddle here. And that's just gonna make sure that nothing sticks, but also that we get an extra little bit of flavor on the outside. We get a beautiful golden brown pancake, and it's uniformly colored. So we're just gonna mix this up. I'm just gonna give this a little brushing here. What I'm gonna do is just basically, I'm gonna cook 5 at a time on this griddle. So I will just outline where I'm going to cook my pancakes, add that little bit of butter. There we are. And a little bit here as well. And now, we're going to take our batter and we're just going to pour our pancakes into the desired size that we want. There we are, 1. These will spread as you put them in the pan. Mine always seem to get a little bigger than I expect, but that's okay. We're all going to the same place. We'll get a 4th one here and a 5th one. There we are. All right, so we'll just give that a quick wipe. There we are. Hands are clean, as always. They've been thoroughly washed. And now we're just going to give these a couple of minutes to cook. Now what you want to look for when you're cooking your pancakes here, you will start to see over a couple of minutes, the edges will start to dry up a little bit, and you'll start to see these little bubbles coming through the center. As soon as those bubbles start to set, and you start to see those holes without getting filled in with wet batter, then you know that's an indication that it's time to flip your pancakes over. So I'm gonna give these guys a good, probably 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll come back and you'll start to see what they look like. They'll be a little different. You'll see the edges will start to dry up a little bit, and those holes will be a little more prominent. So I will see you back in about 3 minutes. All right, we're back. It's been about 2 or 3 minutes. As you can see, the outside of our pancakes are starting to dry up a little bit. You start to see those holes that are coming through, as I mentioned before. So I think these guys are ready to be flipped. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure we can separate these. There we are. Make sure we separate these, and then we'll get right underneath, boom, and give these guys just a nice little flip, just like that. Let's see if we can get in here with this guy. There we are, and there we are. Beautifully golden, beautifully fluffy. The smell is absolutely fantastic. So we'll give these guys another couple of minutes on the underside just to make sure that we get a light golden brown, and then we're ready to plate up. Now what I like to do with my pancakes, because we've got hot pancakes coming off the griddle right onto the plate, what I've got here is some real maple syrup from my home province of Quebec. Some real maple syrup, and what I've done is I've taken this maple syrup, because we usually keep it in the fridge. This is real maple syrup. We've just warmed it up in the microwave for about a minute just to take the chill out of it. The last thing you want to do is have beautifully piping hot pancakes off the griddle and then you got cold maple syrup going on there. We can do better than that. So let's heat up our maple syrup just to make sure that we've got hot maple syrup going on hot pancakes. Let me tell you something, it doesn't get much better than that. So we will just give these guys a quick look underneath here. Oh, they are starting to get some color. I like what I am seeing here. There we are. These are all coming along very, very nicely. So what we'll do is we'll take one of these bigger guys. We'll start with this guy at the bottom, and we'll put a couple of these smaller guys right on top. And we'll just take these guys here, put them on a different plate. There we are. And before we go on with our second batch, just gonna shut the heat off here for a sec. We've got to taste. We've got to give this a quick taste test just to make sure that we've done this right. So we'll give this a nice bit of maple syrup. We've got our knife and our fork. And let's see if we have done this justice. Oh. Oh. Pillowy soft with that little bit of crunch from the cornmeal. Just makes it a little bit more interesting, adds a good bit of contrast of texture, but just phenomenal flavor. You get a little bit of the hint of that background note of vanilla, some beautiful maple syrup. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Do you have to have this just as pancakes? Absolutely not. You can have this with fried egg on top, maybe an over easy egg on top, a couple of slices of bacon if you want to get a little bit more protein into the dish, but ultimately a phenomenal recipe. I hope you try it. If you haven't yet, do like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one.